I'm Supply Chain Director for Alchemies, based in Ireland. I also take responsibility for the Operational Excellence Programme within Alchemies. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we've engaged our employee base in our OPEX programme. So I'm going to go through my slides, and by all means, any questions I'll try to take at the end. Okay? So just to give you a little bit of background on Alchemies very quickly, we're a biotechnology company based both in the US and in Ireland. The Irish facility operates to FDA and EMEA approved. We're manufacturing 10 different products for a number of large, mid-size and virtual pharma companies. The facility itself is capable of producing approximately 2 billion doses annually. And as I say, we manufacture and distribute products to 98 territories worldwide. Just some of the products we manufacture may be familiar to some of you folks. Again, manufactured for both US and rest of world markets. And our technologies include wet granulation, fluid bed coating, film coating, right the way through tableting and encapsulation primarily is our capabilities. We have development capabilities and can bring products from very early stage right through to commercial scale. So a little bit on our OPEX program just to start. Obviously, most people and most organizations today have an OPEX program in place, and obviously the goal of that OPEX program we see is to move the view of operational excellence and the strategic relevance of operational excellence from what has historically been a low position to being a much more improved, positive position, if you like, focusing on bringing the leadership and support of leadership right the way through to strategically relevant. I think as the markets and the competition throughout the industry increases year on year, the requirement for us as an industry is to improve and continuously focus on improvement of all things we do while maintaining a strong quality and compliance base and track record. So that's something we feel we have significantly made some good progress in over the last number of years within Alchemies, and hopefully today I'll just give you a little bit more on how we achieve that. So operational excellence, in our view, requires to be a holistic approach. It's not really just a program that you insert into your organization and hopefully it'll work. It needs to take a very broad range and very much a very supportive approach throughout the organization, right from very senior leadership. So we focused on ensuring that operational excellence is part of the vision and mission of the organization, making sure that from a strategy perspective that's very much front and center in what we do. And when we talk about our strategy for the next 4 to 5 years, operational excellence is always a key element. And probably one of the key takeaways from my presentation will be the importance of senior leadership support and buy-in of the operational excellence program. You find across your employee base some people very enthused about operational excellence and some people very neutral on it as an approach. We've felt that ensuring the senior leadership team support is critical in the support of the program throughout the organization. So I think that's a key takeaway. Moving on a little bit in terms of our strategy. So we kicked off our program around 2009, and over the course of those first 4 years or so, we're focusing on a variety of areas. First of all, we put in place a communication process and a structure, and that was to focus on improving an understanding of operational excellence throughout the organization, and continuing to train folks and ensure that there was communication around that process. I'll talk a little bit more about what that training meant for our organization as we go through the slides. Obviously then, once we had our starting point, we made sure that the projects we picked were strategically relevant projects that were going to have an impact. I'm sure most people have heard of the term low-hanging fruit, so we went after projects that were achievable, but also strategically relevant, so we could show the benefits of the program both to the employee base and also the senior leadership team within the organization. And then we benchmarked very heavily what were other companies doing, what was best in class in this area, how were they successful, and what made them successful in their program. So a lot of learning for our organization in those early days. We then put in place a lean structure, operating principles and a culture to embed work practices. So that really focused on communication to the employee base, ensuring that there was an understanding of what we were trying to achieve as an organisation, and ensuring that people were brought along on that journey. I think that's a critical point. Engagement is a two-way process, so you've got to communicate, you've also got to listen. And I think once we kicked off our program, we heard a lot of people come from operations with very good ideas about how to improve the business, and those ideas had to be listened to. We had to engage with people. They felt if they were listened to, that they were involved much more. And often they had the solutions. In many cases, the solutions already existed in the organisation. We needed to ensure that we listened. We then embedded Six Sigma systems, I suppose, to ensure that our existing volume, our efficiencies were brought into our existing base, and very much so as a contract manufacturing services provider, we wanted to make sure that our NPI process, our new product introduction process, was efficient and enhanced by the Operational Excellence Programme. And that's something that we continue to focus on. Something that we used as a diagrammatic representation of what we were trying to achieve was what we called our House of Lean. So for all of our manufacturing processes and very many of our other processes outside operations, we wanted to ensure that we had operational stability. So the foundation of the House of Lean was ensuring that throughout our work practices, that there were standardized, robust processes, whether that be in manufacturing, in our finance group, wherever the processes were, that they were sound, that they were robust, repeatable, and we eliminated variability. So a lot of our initial work in the area of OE was engaging with the employees to understand what causes common cause variation, what do you understand of common cause variation, how does that differ from what we call special cause variation, and trying to minimize and eliminate that from the manufacturing processes. While all the while working with our suppliers to ensure that they understood how variability in their equipment and materials could impact our processes. So really focused on ensuring a foundation of operational stability before kicking on to the other elements. So next up we focused on the principle of just in time, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. It's a key principle in Lean, and that's ensuring that we produce as much as possible the right parts, the right materials at the right time. So to try and minimize our inventory levels and reduce our lead times. So a lot of companies focus on this element when they go after Lean, because a lot of financial capital is tied up in inventory and work in progress. I think it's an element for sure, it's a key element, but it's not probably the most critical element in the initial phase of introduction, because unless you've got stable processes, maybe reducing your inventory isn't a great focus initially. Really critical to the engagement that we went after in the House of Lean was really on the flexible, motivated workforce. So, as everybody knows, you're only as good as your team, and for us, it was making sure that the engagement of employees was there, so that we brought people with us through the program. So we did a lot of work on training people as problem solvers, and we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. But really what that means was giving them the tools and techniques to be able to solve problems themselves, and try to improve their workspace so that they could work more efficiently with their input. And finally, in terms of the pillars of the House of Lean, we wanted to focus on building quality into the processes. So in this space, we did a lot of work on improving our systems and improving our approach to error proofing, for example, simple visual controls, machine efficiency. We also engaged in an element of process analytical technology in this space, again helping to build in quality to the processes and ensure that those three pillars, if you like, ultimately we're going to lead to, as a contract services provider, happy customers. Ultimately that's the goal of the program. And that being measured by our metrics in the space of quality, in the space of lead time, and obviously year-on-year cost improvements. So really the focus of the program is summarised nicely in this slide, but all of that was only achieved obviously by the engagement of employees, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Our program overall had a number of elements. I'm going to focus a little bit today on the yellow belt belting program, if you like, our yellow and green belt program, which again is a common element to operational excellence programs, I'm sure again folks are familiar with. We also had other areas of focus, and each of these elements, if you like, was sponsored by a member of the leadership team within the Athlone facility. So you see we focused on tech transfers, changeover programs, our customer program, voice of customer program, leaning out our lab activities, so a lean in the lab program, and then a 5S program, which again is a very well-known element of operational excellence. And that was all overseen by a steering group made up of representation from the leadership team, who had a vested interest and a sponsoring element in terms of these elements. So as I say, we initiated the program over in 2009, so we're going into our 4th year. And initially the focus was in the employee engagement space, so really getting people to understand what we were trying to achieve, engaging with them to understand what concerned them and what their challenges were, and by doing that, ensuring that they got involved. And the second phase has really been to try and motivate those folks to get involved. And how we've done that, we'll talk again towards the end of the presentation in that. But we've really tried to build in continuous improvement into their day-to-day role. So it really is part of their job, not something that they do or a subset of people do. So that's been critical, I think. And now we really see the benefits of those projects and that involvement come to fruition. Initially, we focused obviously on the operational areas, so manufacturing, engineering, quality. Now we're focusing in on the service areas like finance, supply chain, those spaces, obviously. So trying to create a culture ultimately of overall engagement is what we've tried to achieve. In terms of our program itself, I've just tried to identify here some of the elements of the program as pertaining to the years in which we've engaged. So initially, there was a lot of work done on communication, developing and organising our manufacturing spaces to value streams, which allowed a much more collaborative nature to the manufacturing processes. Then in 2010, we focused on embedding further those value streams and focusing on areas like changeover, standardising the work practices also. And more recently, as I said, we're moving towards those elements of, for example, our black belt program, measuring our processes using process capability measurements such as CPKs. I'm sure, again, members of the audience are familiar with that. So having an understanding of the process performance of each critical element is something that we've tried to focus on. And as I mentioned earlier, process analytical technology where it makes sense. So not just measurements for measurement's sake, but when there's actually benefit in it. From the point of view of operational excellence, we've focused there also. So in terms of maximising employee engagement, really this slide hopefully gives a representation of how we as a leadership team felt we needed to approach that. So we needed to focus on the hearts and minds of people as opposed to the pure communication element. So it's one thing to ensure people understand the message. It's very much a different thing to ensure people act on that message and see the benefit of that message for them in the longer term. So the element of hearts and emotions is what we really try to focus on. So making a behavioural change requires people to know what they do currently and why it needs to improve and how they might improve it. And that's very much a step up from commitment, which is, yeah, I'm in the bus, I'm interested in what you're doing, but that we needed people to actually make the change. So actually get involved, not just understand that we wanted to change. And that's a critical difference. And moving from what is typically what, most companies struggle a little bit with is the awareness, so a lot of communication programs, everybody knows we're doing OPEX, but we're not really seeing the benefit. So they understand the message, but they're not really understanding how they can contribute to the message. So really understanding and engaging with people at the hearts and minds level is the critical piece, I think, in terms of engagement. And that comes from, it being seen as being part of their day-to-day job and making sure that people understand through their direct line manager the importance of operational excellence. So really engaging with the leadership team at all levels in the organisation to empower them to deliver the message and then for the workforce to actually understand the benefit of doing that both for them and for the organisation. So this slide just tries to summarise some of how we broke down the roles and responsibilities of engagement. So at the senior leadership level, there was, a lot of information available on our newsletter platforms, where we would have engaged at group meetings. So typically we would have town hall meetings where we would speak about our program and its benefits, and then obviously regular updates through emails, etc. Taking that to the wider management group, we would have done a lot of work on getting the wider management group. So these are manufacturing supervisors, engineers, people who are working on the shop floor, to understand and become aware of the program. And then from those groups, identifying people who had the capability and competence to become green belts and deliver on green belt projects. Commitment, again, team meetings, continuous feedback. And then ensuring at the action level, and this is probably one of the key points, is that particularly at the leadership level, that the behaviours exhibited match the words that we're trying to display. So where people, hear us speak about operational excellence, I think it's very impactful many of the leadership team have engaged in this process where they actually become project champions. They do 5S events in their own area. They attend Kaizen events. They're actually part of the process. So they can see the importance at the employee level throughout the organisation. They can see the importance of these initiatives. This slide really tries to summarise the reality of change management, as anybody working in that space knows. Even though I've described that we've engaged our employees, that process takes time, and it happens at different stages. So the goal of our change management process was that we're going to have some sprinters. We're going to have people who get to the finish line very, very quickly, and then we're going to have people who struggle with the change. So the idea isn't that we don't want to leave people behind. We want to get people through the change, and that's okay to understand that it takes different rates for different people. It's not about everybody understanding initially. What we didn't want to have was a situation where people were not part of the process. So very much it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of people over time will pretty much pick up and understand, but then you've got the 20% of people, and those people need to be engaged with, probably in our experience even more so, to ensure that there's an understanding and awareness of the benefit of the program, and for both them and the organisation. In terms of I mentioned our belting program. We took a view to train about 10% of our organisation to green belt level. We're an organisation of about 450 people based in Athlone in Ireland for this program. So really over the course of the first couple of years we focused on the green belt folks. So those were people at middle management levels or at individual contributor levels where they had a very strong process experience. So they were involved in the day-to-day manufacturing processes. In turn, then we got those folks engaged in projects and that were going to be of significant benefit to the organisation, and then they worked on training individual contributors at very much at operator level or at employee level in the space of what we call yellow belts. So these were, introductory level problem-solving tools and techniques programs in that space, in which people engaged and delivered small level projects with small benefits, not huge projects, but ones that made a difference, and also ones that showed that you could make change. You could make change in a controlled way. Oh, and then over the course of the last number of years, we focused on training a small population of folks to a black belt level. And again, you can see the arrows indicate that those folks get engaged in training and mentoring of people at the various levels. So black belts would mentor and train our green belts, and green belts would obviously mentor and train our yellow belts. So throughout the organisation, there was a cascade of knowledge, I suppose, built up over the course of the last number of years. And that engagement, it meant that, yellow belts in an organisation of 450, we now have approximately 430 yellow belts by the end of the year. So we almost have everybody through a yellow belt program. And it became, I suppose, cool to become a yellow belt. There was a certification process. There was recognition. It very much quickly built momentum. These were open classes that we scheduled through our organisation, with some online learning first of all, and then classroom-based learning and some projects to follow. So we made sure that people had opportunity to get involved, and then obviously made sure that when they did get involved, that they were recognised for that involvement. So as I say, our program has three elements: our yellow belt, our green belt, For some reason our black belt is blue there, but our black belt program. So as I said, the yellow belt is very much introductory. You can see that the projects are small in value, so maybe $2,000 to $5,000 saving, small value. You know, everything from, you know, gloves and consumables and things that people use every day that they see a better way of handling at the very early level. And those projects were chartered and were signed off at a very local level. So they were sponsored, as I say, and they delivered subsequent projects. That was part of the yellow belt piece. On the green belt side, then there was a little bit more detail on the course. So it was a 6-day course, 6 to 8 day course. The projects obviously had more benefit in terms of value, and they either focus on an efficient cost saving or an improvement in our safety or compliance area. And again, there was an ongoing commitment of additional projects year after year. And again, that was signed off by slightly higher level. Finally then, on black belt, again, higher value projects, more significant impact to the organisation, and would have had more senior chartering and sponsorship. And again, ongoing requirement to deliver projects on an annual basis. So that was our approach to our engagement through training. This slide goes through a lot of the detail on the green belt program. You can see it broken up over 8 days. Effectively, it followed the DMAIC cycle, our program. So we developed a program where we focused on, you know, on giving people tools and techniques to understand the define phase initially and what was involved in the define phase. So using SIPOC charting, project planning, Gantt charting, all of those tools and techniques. Moving on then into a little bit around change management, but then into measurement, so measurement system analysis, gauge R&R, variable gauge R&R, understanding the impact of bias and reproducibility and in that space, getting a good understanding on control charting for processes and putting in place systems that allowed people to do that effectively. Really improving our competence in the area of statistics was a key element of that element. And then into the analyze phase, obviously using cause and effect and Pareto and all those spaces. And then finally into a control. So again, variable run charts, control charts, SPC processes. So we trained, as I say, about 10% of our organisation to this level with certification and projects associated. The type of areas of projects that people focus on, I mentioned some of these. The early initial projects or yellow belt projects will be in areas of waste elimination, energy reduction, you know. We've seen everything from people thinking about, you know, changing light-saving energy bulbs to, timer switches and really good ideas, but hadn't been there in place. So, and improving our training system. Our green belt projects then, really improving to best in class our changeover processes in our packaging areas, for example, introducing improvements in terms of our lead time performance for our clients. And then the black belt projects have focused really on where we've had process variation, on yield challenges that we focused really on understanding that process variation and mitigating it through the use of the tools and techniques under the black belt umbrella. Again, I mentioned the areas of focus. So this is a Pareto just showing the engagement by function within the organisation. So you can see in manufacturing and engineering, we focus primarily our training on our green belts there, with other groups such as quality, our development team, throughout the organisation getting involved and delivering projects in that space. On yellow belts, similar, quality control in this case, having the most yellow belts in the organisation, followed by manufacturing and then the other functions. So really, if you like, focusing on the areas of operations primarily, both quality operations and manufacturing operations, to engage with the employee base to make improvements. The type of projects I mentioned, some of them, for greenbelt projects we focused on waste elimination, productivity improvements, and then the yellow belt are mostly in the area of waste elimination, so a variety of areas. But while we were prescript to a point, we did give people freedom to select a project. So we would have said, look, we want you to focus on areas of let's say cost reduction from the point of view of yield improvement or energy consumption, and then give them the autonomy to develop an idea in that space and say, well, look, if we change this process, we feel it will be more efficient. and then engaging in dialogue to make sure that that was understood, and obviously allowed for people to feel a sense of ownership of the project, which is critical. They felt that it was their idea, not senior leadership's idea, and became enthused to deliver that, which is often something that is very important in engagement. People want to make a difference, we find, and if you listen to their ideas, in many cases those ideas can come to fruition very successfully. So I just wanted to summarize in a slide very quickly our journey. Initially, when we started the program, we focused on lean introduction and training of our senior leadership team and awareness in that space. Did a lot of value stream mapping of our processes. We embedded the elements of lean into our mission and strategy as we go forward. We reorganized our operations group to support that in terms of value streams. We then went and understood and presented at conferences to understand what other companies were doing. We then established our steering group, presented at some conferences, obviously got involved in more regular meetings in the space of steering group. One of the first projects we kicked off was our 5S program. We followed that with our learning and communication program, and really went out and visited sites where they had very strong OE programs, and I would encourage people to do that. There's a lot of learning. Everyone has the same challenges in this space, so I think there's a lot of shared learning can be done. We then kicked off our Greenbelt projects, and we have had 3 programs. Our changeover program initiated in late 2009, our Lean in the Lab program following our Yellow Belt program, and right now we're focusing on our final Greenbelt training. We feel we have a sufficient quantity of green belts in the organisation delivering projects on an annual basis, so we're not going to continue to train. We want to develop those people and continue to see the benefit of that training. So in terms of the overall model, it's effectively over the course of 2009 we set it in place strategic objectives that focused on OE. We then communicated that and got involved at departmental level to make sure that that communication was robust. We then engaged in our newsletter processes and many other roundtable processes where we could get people really understanding the benefits of OE. And then finally you see a career progression. So we launched a model for performance for growth. So we went after understanding and embedding operational excellence into the day-to-day role for folks. As I say, this is just a snapshot of our intranet website where we focus on our operational excellence, and that covers everything from the program to projects. It's available to all the employees. Our communications, you can see we have a monthly newsletter with OE front and centre, always in place, always messaging our progress, our performance, the relevance of it strategically, and in line with other news like how many babies have been born in the organisation and when we're next going for a run and all of that type of information. So very much making it part and parcel of the day-to-day. We've been recognised within Ireland by a number of different bodies and accreditation groups for our programme. So you can see here there are a number of engineering and safety awards we've won based on our program. So it's nice to get that external validation of what we're doing. So right now, as of Q1 2012, we're approximately at about 85% of our organisation has been engaged in somehow in those processes, and that's really a testament to the team in Athlone for their communication and commitment to the program. Finally, I just would like to talk about a very key element, which is linking it to performance. I think in terms of linking it to performance, that's a very important element. We went to develop a competency model for our operators, and here we embedded, you can see in red, continuous improvement. So this identifies for a manufacturing operator or manufacturing associate different competencies that they need to have at various levels, right the way through to a senior manufacturing associate. All the while, at each level, they need to focus on continuous improvement. And that's now embedded into their roles. It becomes part of their performance measures on an annual basis. Another example is just some of our quality control metrics. So the folks develop their objectives around the performance targets for the year and how they'll contribute and the value of that contribution. So finally, just to summarize, I suppose, in terms of maximising employee engagement, our experience has been that the key elements are making operational excellence part of the day-to-day. And that comes from engagement, it comes from communication, it obviously comes from a keen awareness and knowledge from the very senior leadership in the organisation to OE. As I say, leadership buy-in is critical. Embedding it as an operational or into objectives on an annual basis, making it part of the role as opposed to an additional part of your role, and really linking it to progression. So if you want to get on in our organisation, if you want to develop, you must engage in the programme. Okay, thanks very much for your attention. I'll take any questions you might have, and you're welcome to visit us here in Hall 10 and C33 if you have any further questions. Thank you.